Thank you, Phoebe. Next, we're going to hear from Erica Mine Simmons, who is a member of the Philly Coalition for Racial Justice and a fighter against police brutality and murder. She was arrested in Baltimore for being part of the uprising against Freddie Gray's murder by the police. She has stood strong on the need for the movement against state-sanctioned violence, to include in its leadership LGBTQ people, women, and youth. Eric, please help me welcome Erica.
Thank you so much. It is with great honor to be standing in the Audubon where our great leader and father, Malcolm X, once stood. That is very important to me as a Black woman. I'm presenting to the party today a proposal to mobilize across the country for the Democratic National Convention held in Philadelphia this coming July of 2016. Philadelphia is the birthplace of the Declaration of Independence, placed in Congress on July 4th of 1776. Within this document, the colonists declared they no longer wanted to be under a state of oppression without the inclusion of the voice of the people it represented. Those people, the founding fathers of the so-called American government, weren't speaking of the representation of the entirety of the colonies. They were speaking completely of themselves, the wealthy landowners, the dictators of the class within the society, and the proprietors of all businesses. The people they were not speaking of had no say in this formation of this document because they weren't worthy of input nor respected. That did not include women, the poor, the workers, and most importantly, the slaves they owned. They had no say in this formation. What the founding fathers did know, that they too were under the guise of dictatorship, that they did not have the best interests of the people in mind. What they chose to forget was this country was founded on capitalism and state-sanctioned violence. They robbed, killed, and slaughtered the natives of this land. You can't find something that already existed before you got here. Within this document, they spoke of all men being created equal. They had certain unalienable rights, the gift of liberty, life, and the pursuit of happiness. To secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, the people. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute a new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. They criticized the British for quartering large bodies of armed troops among them, for imposing taxes on them without their consent, and waging war against them. Sounds like America to me. This has been the history of the United States since its Declaration of Independence. This has also been the history of the city of Philadelphia. And it represents the ruling of the wealthy that has constantly placed itself ahead by stepping on the backs of the poor to advance its policies of the ruling population. Philadelphia is the birthplace of solitary confinement in the prison system. Philadelphia, being one of the largest 4 cities in the country, has one of the highest poverty rates, affecting the Black and brown communities the most. Philadelphia has one of the most failing school districts in the country, where the school district literally sits on books the length of a city block, while the literacy rates in our community soars. The district has accumulated millions of debts for our schools, yet the city profits by closing and selling schools for private development, who turn those buildings into landmark historic living. The gentrification in Philadelphia has pushed more people of color out of their neighborhoods, and not only into the streets, but into senior living facilities as well, as no place for the youth to go. The homeless population we saw with the Pope coming to Philadelphia, we saw mothers on the street, whole families on the streets, with babies as young as 1 month old. And the city still pushed them into more unlivable conditions, where they literally closed off and put gates around open spaces. We saw the homeless wandering around because the Pope literally bought the entire space for which the homeless people lived and quartered among, where the space was used to capitalize off of the people who were touring and visiting the city at the time. We saw the homeless population in spaces within the city that they normally do not congregate, and they are still there to this day. Police brutality is historic as the name itself in Philadelphia. From the invasion and the slaughtering of the Lenape tribes, to the brutal beating and stripping of the Panthers, and to the Move 9, to the unjust beating of Tyree Carroll. Just this past week, a man by the name of Omar Lopez was killed by transit cops who tased him to death. We are still seeking justice for young Darren Manning, who had his testicles ruptured by a female officer who has yet to be held unaccountable, and he was only 16 years old. We are still demanding justice for Brandon Tate Brown, Frank McQueen, and our beloved Mumia Abu-Jamal. We are still demanding the fair and equal treatment of our LGBT community, for gender-neutral bathrooms everywhere within the city, and to be called by their preferred pronouns and names. We seek justice for London Chanel and Keisha Jenkins, and we demand that they too are protected within our communities. All over the city, the people are rising up, the students, the homeless, the disabled, the elderly, the wage workers, the immigrants, and more importantly, the people as a whole. This is a significant sign that the only solution is a socialist revolution. Philadelphia is Baltimore. Philadelphia is Ferguson. Philadelphia is Chicago and Detroit. Philadelphia represents all the barrios throughout the world. We heard the cries, justice for Freddie Gray in Tel Aviv, and we heard the chants, Black Lives Matter in Palestine. Oppressed people here and throughout the world want to be free. It's not enough to go to DC for one day and shut down the Capitol or to call for an execution of shopping for Black Fridays. We must begin to shut down the entire economy. All the corporations that rob our communities of a true, meaningful life. The entire capitalist system as a whole must be abolished and shut down. We must demand the true meaning of democracy be established, and that is by raising up the voices of the people and demanding the government that actually serves the best interests and the common good of the people. We must take back the land, the airways, the buildings, and the political offices. We must get away from these two-party electorals and the voting straight democratic analogy that so many of us have believed in and has kept us oppressed for so many years. We must educate our communities on what it means to be a socialist. Bernie Sanders called himself one. Now it's time to show and prove. Forget all that I marched with the civil rights era. What about the children being gunned down by the cops? Hillary Clinton is in favor of keeping the death penalty. Why? Because she's a fucking murderer. No decent human being will ever want to make themselves the authors of taking someone else's life, especially when we have a faulty penal system that locks away so many of my Black and brown people who are innocent, especially when cops commit more crimes than the actual fucking criminals. Especially when her husband implemented the 3-strike rule that has so many of my brothers and sisters incarcerated for life on nonviolent crimes. There's 1 million Black men missing from our society, and you could believe between Reagan's drug wars and Clinton's 3-strike rules, our men are in prison or in the fucking grave. Especially when every other week we hear of exonerations from people who have spent most of their life in jail, falsely accused and set up by this government. They put the drugs in our communities and then blame us for using them. They put the guns in our communities, and now they want to disarm us. And we say, hell no. You don't disarm the people. You direct the people to take up arms against the system and not themselves. We can't be selective by picking the lesser of two evils when the selective assassinations of our unarmed people are rising. We can no longer afford to watch the government push back our Social Security to the age of 70 while expanding prison development and murdering our babies as young as 3 and 7 years of age. We can no longer see the failing of school officials and their failed discipline of our children on display when we are watching police toss our young women like rag dolls across the floor. We can no longer sit in silence when the Supreme Court has on the table right now a decision to sentence our children to life in prison. We can't afford to send troops to fight wars across the seas when the wars are in our own fucking backyard. Sandra Bland, Rakia Boyd, Ayanna Stanley Jones deserve to live. Natasha McKenna, Amber Moreau, London Chanel deserve to live. Renisha McBride, Tanisha Anderson, Chantel Davis deserve to live. We want answers and we want justice. And we want racist ass cops off the streets and out of our communities. Moreover, we want to live and we want to breathe. Our lives are worth more than a trending fucking hashtag. It's time to stand and defend our lives in the present. Karl Marx said, it's not the illusions of our conditions we have to focus on. It's the conditions of our illusions that give rise for it to exist. There is no celebration until the job is done, until killer cops are indicted, convicted, and sentenced beneath the damn jails. There is no celebration because justice has not been served. This system is so disturbed it will piss on you and then claim that it's fucking raining. The role of the police has always been to protect and serve, so they're doing their jobs. Protecting the wealth and the land has changed from the plantation to the corporation. There are no good cops in a racist system. You could be a good friend, a good neighbor, a good son, or a daughter, but when you put on that goddamn uniform, you represent historic fucking repression. And the only solution is a socialist revolution. It's time to mobilize the masses and demand they work for our votes. Disown inequality and stand on the right side of justice, the people's side. Demand that they address the issues that affect the Black and brown communities the most. Demand these pigs out of our homes, schools, neighborhoods, and demand that all prisoners that are victims of this cruel system be set free. The power is in the people, and we have the right, as declared in the Declaration of Independence, to rid ourselves of this faulty capitalist system, to abolish and not reform. You can't reform a wretched system. That's simply asking the oppressor to let up off our necks a fucking little bit, and we can't afford to do that. We want them off our necks, our backs, our shoulders, and anywhere else that's unfucking comfortable. We must build a true socialist society that's written by us for us. That includes all members of our societies. It is our right, and we must invoke them at all costs. Resistance is the only solution, and there can be no peaceful revolution until we can sleep. There can be no peaceful revolution when we can't eat, sleep, live, or breathe in peace. I'm sorry. I'm wrapping up right now. The elections will matter when Black lives matter, when Black girls matter, when Black women matter, when Black men matter, when Black boys matter, when Black trans matter, when Black queers matter, when Black poverty matters, when Black mental health matters, when Black disabled people matters, when Black seniors matter, when Black joy matters, when Black labor matters, when Black wealth matters, when Black land matters, when Black futures matters, when Black prisoners matter, when Black culture matters, when Black stability matters, when Black tears matter, when Black bodies as a whole matter, when Black freedom matters, when Black debt matters, when Black gentrification matters, when Black preservation matters, when Black dreams matter, when Black education matters, when Black smiles matter, when Black revolution matter as a whole. My daughter will see a revolution in her lifetime. This is why we must mobilize. I'm tired of seeing mothers crying over the bodies of their children. And I'll be damned if my daughter has to bury me, if I have to bury my daughter when it should be the other way around. This is why the DNC must be shut down. If they don't get no justice, if we don't get no justice, they don't get no peace. And this is what we have gathered in Philadelphia. This is a list of the people, of the black people so far whose lives have been stolen. And we have the Democratic and the Republican sign because neither one of them actually give a damn, and we know that. And the list is forever growing. The list is forever growing, and this is not a representation of the entire society. We're up in the thousands of people who are being murdered daily. Every 24 to 36 hours, there's someone killed by the cops in this society. And so I take it up to you guys to take this back to your own communities. We have flyers and we have posters, and on the flyers here, there is a hashtag, and there's also a website where, as though if you want to get involved, you can just email, and we can send you out a copy of this flyer to include your city, your location, your times, and your dates. Ours in Philadelphia is scheduled for December 18th and January 15th to begin mobilizing around the different organizations. But not only that, to get the youth involved, we must involve the music and the language that they understand. And so the best way to do that is, Marvin Gaye said it best when he spoke to capitalism: money, I take it; before I see it, you take it. Nas spoke to opening every cell in Attica and sending them to Africa. Tupac spoke to got money for wars but can't feed the poor. Jada Kiss said, we gonna make it. Kendrick Lamar said, we gonna be all right. And Gil Scott-Heron said the revolution will not be televised because it will be mobilized and publicized by the masses. The Zulu saying, Izwe Lethu Africa, that means the land is ours. And the Swahili saying for Uhuru, Uhuru Sasa, which means freedom, freedom now. Thank you.